Are you about to spend $10,000 on a motorcycle that's going to destroy your back by lunch, sit in the garage by autumn, and cost you more in regret than it ever gave you in miles? Because right now, in 2026, most senior riders are shopping with the wrong criteria, chasing legacy badges, following decade-old reviews, or buying whatever their riding buddy recommends without considering that their buddy's body is 20 years younger. This list cuts through all of it. 10 motorcycles that actually work for riders over 55, ergonomically, financially, physically. And number 3 is going to make a lot of experienced riders genuinely angry. Good. Keep watching. Number 10. Honda CB500X. Let me start here because this one is going to sting a little. If you have 30 years of riding experience and someone points you toward a Honda CB500X, your first instinct is probably something between offense and laughter. Beginner bike. Starter displacement. Not serious. Here is what that instinct is costing you. The CB500X in 2026 is a 471cc parallel twin, approximately 430 pounds wet, ABS standard, a 31.7-inch seat height that works for most inseam lengths, and an upright riding position that keeps your wrists neutral and your spine out of trouble. And yes, the power is modest. That is not the problem I am describing. The problem is that most riders who dismiss it have never sat on one as a 60-year-old with a tight hip and a back that argues with forward controls after mile 80. Parallel twin vibration at highway speeds is almost non-existent. Service intervals are long. Maintenance is straightforward. Honda's dealer network means you are not driving 4 hours for a warranty conversation. And the MSRP of around $7,500 new leaves money on the table for gear, a decent seat upgrade, or just keeping it in your pocket. Here is the real argument. This bike is comfortable enough that you will actually ride it, and the best motorcycle for a senior is not the most impressive one in the garage. It is the one that gets ridden. What makes someone walk past the CB500X without a second look is almost entirely ego. And I understand that. Experience is worth something. But your back does not care what the displacement is. If you live near a Honda dealer, and most of you do, and you want reliability without ownership friction, this belongs on your shortlist before anything with twice the weight and 3 times the service cost. Number 9. Kawasaki Vulcan S. Most cruisers work like this. One size, take it or leave it. Your torso is too long, your inseam is too short, your shoulder reach is slightly off. Too bad. Adjust yourself to the motorcycle. The Vulcan S runs it backwards. Kawasaki's ErgoFit system gives you a 3-position adjustable handlebar, 3-position foot peg adjustment, and adjustable seat position. The 649cc parallel twin produces smooth, accessible power. The wet weight sits around 498 pounds, and the seat height comes in at 27.8 inches, genuinely low enough for shorter inseams without the knee-destroying squat of some cruisers. Around $7,999 new in 2026, ABS standard. What seniors overlook here is that ergonomic adjustability is not a comfort luxury. For a rider managing a shoulder issue, a shorter inseam, or reduced hip flexibility, being able to actually fit the motorcycle properly can mean the difference between riding 2 hours or riding 30 minutes and calling it done. The lack of prestige works in your favor financially. Nobody is paying a premium for the Vulcan S name, which means the price stays honest and the used market is reasonable. If you and your partner are significantly different sizes and want to share one bike, this is also one of the very few options where both of you might actually fit. That is not marketing copy. That is just how the adjustment range works. Number 8. Royal Enfield Meteor 350. I can hear the skepticism already. Royal Enfield. Leaks, vibration, charm mixed with misery. Bikes that spent more time in the shop than on the road. That was a different motorcycle. Completely different. The Meteor 350 runs on the J-Series platform, an entirely new engine and chassis that Royal Enfield introduced in 2020 and has been refining since. Overhead cam, fuel-injected, 349cc single, around 20 horsepower, and long-term owner reports that look nothing like the horror stories attached to older RE models. The vibration that used to define the brand is largely gone at highway speeds. The reliability pattern on the new platform has been, by most documented accounts, genuinely good. Now here is what makes it interesting for this list specifically. Wet weight around 350 pounds, seat height around 27.6 inches, highway capable at 70 to 75 miles per hour. Tripper navigation included from the factory, and an MSRP starting around $4,799 to $5,299 depending on your market. At that weight, if a slow-speed parking moment goes wrong, and at some point in every rider's life one does, most riders can manage the recovery themselves. That matters. That matters a lot more at 65 than it did at 35. The one legitimate caution, Royal Enfield's dealer network is still thinner than the Japanese brands in rural areas. Check your nearest dealer before you commit. If you are 3 hours from the nearest service center, the ownership equation shifts. But if you have local access, the Meteor 350 is delivering more per dollar than almost anything else at its price point in 2026. If you've been telling people Royal Enfield is junk, you are 10 years behind the conversation. Number 7. Suzuki V-Strom 650. Before you move on because you think adventure bikes are for younger riders doing YouTube expeditions, that assumption is costing you riding seasons. Here is the part that most senior riders have not considered. The ergonomic position on an adventure bike, hips neutral, spine upright, weight distributed across hands, seat, and feet, is almost exactly what a physical therapist would put you in if you described chronic lower back pain. The cruiser position, with forward controls pushing your pelvis into a backward tilt for hours, is the opposite of that. You have been paying premium money for a seating position that works against your spine. The V-Strom 650 in 2026, 645C V-twin, around 71 horsepower, approximately 474 pounds wet, ABS standard, genuine wind protection from the fairing, and a Suzuki lowering kit available if the 31.9-inch seat height is a concern. Get you down to around 29.9 inches with that kit. MSRP approximately $9,999. 3-year warranty in most markets. The V-twin's torque curve is smooth and accessible low in the rev range. You are not working the gearbox aggressively to keep power on. That smoothness reduces fatigue over a long day in a way that peak horsepower numbers never will. The V-Strom 650 also happens to hold its resale value unusually well for the price. It is never exciting enough to depreciate fast, which for a senior buyer who is not planning to keep every bike forever is exactly the kind of boring financial stability that saves money 2 or 3 years out. Who should think carefully about this one? If your back has been the reason you have been cutting rides short, this might not be a motorcycle choice. It might be a medical one. Number 6. Honda Rebel 500. I know, another Honda. And yes, Honda markets the Rebel 500 to younger riders, new riders, first bike buyers. The branding is deliberate. The result is that experienced senior riders walk past it. Here is what they are walking past. 414 pounds wet, 27.2-inch seat height, 471cc parallel twin with strong low-end torque, smooth fuel injection, standard ABS, a wide seat with enough padding that 2 hours in does not punish you, and Honda's dealer infrastructure, which means if something goes wrong, you are not negotiating with a shop in another city. At 414 pounds, most riders can manage a slow-speed tip without needing assistance. That is not a small thing. Physically recovering from a dropped bike at 62 is a different conversation than at 42, and bikes that are light enough to handle yourself keep minor incidents from becoming major ones, physically and financially. The MSRP, around $6,999, leaves a genuine gap between this and the bikes many seniors are actually buying. And that gap does not buy better ergonomics, more comfort, or easier ownership. It mostly buys more weight and a more recognizable badge. The Rebel holds its value reasonably well in the used market, specifically because there is always steady demand from newer riders. You are buying into a market with a built-in exit strategy. Who should ignore everything I just said and buy something else anyway? The rider for whom riding identity is genuinely important, and the Rebel's aesthetic does not fit that identity. That is a real reason. Motorcycles are emotional. A bike you're not proud of is a bike that gets ridden less. But if you can separate your ego from the spec sheet for 10 minutes, the case here is hard to dismiss. And if you want practical advice that actually saves money, the kind of advice that takes the showroom gloss off and shows you what ownership really looks like, hit subscribe. This channel does not do sponsored recommendations. Now back to the list. Number 5. Yamaha X-Max 300. This is the entry that is going to cause the most disagreement. I know that. I am making it anyway. The Yamaha X-Max 300 is a maxi scooter, automatic CVT transmission, 290cc single cylinder, around 385 pounds, 27.6-inch seat height, ABS and traction control standard, fuel economy around 65 to 70 miles per gallon, underseat storage, full upright riding position, MSRP approximately $6,499 to $7,299 depending on your market. The response from most experienced riders is immediate and predictable. That is not a real motorcycle. Here is the question I want you to sit with. If you have arthritis in your left hand, or carpal tunnel, or a surgically repaired shoulder, or Raynaud's phenomenon, and holding a clutch through an hour of stop-and-go traffic causes you real pain, what exactly are you protecting by refusing this machine? Your identity as a rider? Because the X-Max does not care about your identity. It will move you through traffic without pain while the bike you bought for your pride sits in the garage because your hand aches. In Europe, touring riders regularly cover several hundred miles a day on maxi scooters. The category stopped being a city-only beginner product well over a decade ago in markets where it is taken seriously. This is not a suggestion for every senior rider. If you have no physical limitation that the clutch is creating and riding a manual is part of what makes motorcycling worth doing for you, that is completely legitimate. But if the clutch is genuinely becoming a problem and you are riding less because of it, the pride argument is getting expensive. Number 4. Triumph Street Twin. Here is where the money conversation gets more complicated. Because now we are talking about a brand where paying the premium might actually make sense for the right buyer. The Triumph Street Twin in 2026, 900cc high-torque parallel twin, approximately 65 horsepower, around 408 to 430 pounds, depending on configuration, 29.5-inch seat height, fully upright riding position, ABS standard, MSRP around $10,500 to $12,000. Triumph has significantly expanded its North American dealer presence over the last several years, and the modern Bonneville platform has a documented long-term reliability record that holds up. The character here is real. That is not marketing language. The engine feel, the sound, the quality of the controls and finish. Triumph delivered something that a Honda or Kawasaki at a similar weight does not replicate, and it matters if riding enjoyment is part of why you ride. The genuine weakness. Dealer density is still thinner than Honda or Kawasaki in some rural markets. If the nearest authorized Triumph service is a significant distance, the ownership experience changes, and the premium over the Kawasaki Z650 RS or the V-Strom is real money. But here is the counter-argument. A rider who loves their motorcycle rides more. Riding more at 64, the enjoyment, the physical activity, the mental health benefit, is not a trivial outcome. If the Triumph's character is what gets you out on a Tuesday evening when the Honda would have stayed in the garage, that difference in riding hours over 3 years may justify the cost difference more honestly than any spec comparison can. Triumph also holds its value respectably. The gap between the purchase price and the Japanese alternatives narrows somewhat when you account for resale and the relatively manageable maintenance costs on the parallel twin platform. It is not cheap ownership, but it is more honest ownership than some alternatives at this price level. Number 3. Yamaha Tenere 700. I told you in the opening that one entry on this list was going to make experienced riders angry. This is it. The Yamaha Tenere 700 is a mid-weight adventure bike that looks like it belongs to someone who camps in the mountains and films it for social media. It is marketed at younger adventure riders. The Instagram presence does not feature many gray helmets. Most senior riders at a dealership walk straight past it. The seated ergonomic position puts your hips slightly below your knees, your spine in a neutral curve, and your weight distributed across 3 contact points, seat, feet, and hands, without concentrating pressure on your lower lumbar. That is close to the position that rehabilitation specialists recommend for managing chronic lower back pain. That is not an accident. It is what the bike was engineered to do for riders who spend all day in the saddle over variable terrain. The Tenere 700 in 2026, 689cc CP2 parallel twin, around 72 horsepower, approximately 452 pounds wet, genuinely light for what it is. ABS standard adjustable suspension. MSRP approximately $10,999. The seat height at 34.4 inches is the real objection, and it is a legitimate one. But Touratech and other aftermarket suppliers offer lowering solutions, and the Tenere's slim seat and narrow chassis means many riders with shorter inseams can manage the height more easily than the number alone suggests. Here is the experience that some riders describe after switching to this category from a traditional cruiser. They stop cutting rides short. Not because the power changed, because the position stopped fighting them after hour 2. If you have a real back issue, diagnosed, chronic, the reason long rides became an unhappy memory, the Tenere 700 may not be a motorcycle choice. It might be the choice that determines whether you keep riding long distances at all. That sounds dramatic. It isn't. Resale stability on this bike is strong. Demand has consistently exceeded supply in some markets. You are not buying into a depreciation disaster. Number 2. Kawasaki Z650 RS. The Z650 RS does not appear on most senior motorcycle recommendation lists. It shows up in conversations about retro styling and the modern classic segment. That categorization has hidden something useful. 649cc parallel twin, ABS and traction control standard in 2026, approximately 414 pounds wet, 31.1-inch seat height, fully upright and neutral ergonomics, and an MSRP around $8,599. Kawasaki dealer network is solid across North America and most of Europe. Service is straightforward. The unfaired design means that if the bike gets dropped in a parking lot, a slow tip, a moment of inattention, the repair cost stays manageable. Dropped a bar end and a lever, not a $2,000 fairing assembly. Most riders under 60 are buying the Z650 RS for how it looks. Most riders over 60 should be buying it for how it functions. Those are not contradictory arguments. They support each other. The retro aesthetic means the bike carries genuine character without weighing you down with it. The comparison to the Triumph Street Twin is relevant here. The Z650 RS is roughly $2,000 cheaper. The ergonomics are similarly upright. The finish and character are a step behind Triumph's, honestly. But if the premium matters and the Triumph dealer is far away, the Kawasaki makes the practical argument almost by itself. In European markets, returning senior riders have been quietly discovering this category for a few years ahead of North America. The conversation here is catching up. Number 1. Honda NC750X DCT. This is the motorcycle most seniors have heard of and dismissed without seriously considering. And that dismissal has cost some of them their riding careers. The NC750X sits in an awkward position in Honda's lineup. It is not exciting. The 745cc parallel twin is deliberately tuned for smooth, accessible power rather than peak performance, around 57 horsepower. It does not fit cleanly into any style category. The underseat storage compartment gets used as a punchline about groceries, and the DCT, dual-clutch transmission, is the automatic option that some riders treat as a surrender. Here is what all of that snobbery is actually dismissing. The NC750X DCT in 2026, approximately 475 pounds wet, 30.3-inch seat height, fully upright seating position, ABS standard, fuel economy around 60 to 70 miles per gallon, 22-liter underseat storage compartment, 3-year Honda warranty in most markets, Honda's unmatched dealer network, and a seamless automatic transmission system that Honda has been developing and refining across multiple platforms since 2010. That DCT changes everything for one specific group of riders. If you have arthritis in your hands, carpal tunnel, reduced grip strength from any cause, a surgically repaired wrist or shoulder, or Raynaud's phenomenon, the DCT is not a convenience feature. It is the technology that determines whether you can continue riding a full-size motorcycle or not. The alternative for many of these riders is either a maxi scooter or stopping entirely. The NC750X DCT keeps those riders on a real motorcycle, with real suspension, real capability, and full Honda support infrastructure, without the daily physical cost of clutch operation. The ownership math is almost offensive in how sensible it is. Against a Harley-Davidson Goldwing, which is genuinely extraordinary and which many senior riders see as the obvious destination, the NC750X is over $15,000 cheaper, more than 200 pounds lighter, and delivers the majority of what a solo long-distance senior rider actually needs from a touring platform. The Goldwing's reverse gear, 6-speaker audio, and full infotainment system are impressive. They are also things that most solo riders will use maybe 3% of the time they are on the road. The underseat compartment is not a joke. It fits a full-face helmet in many configurations. That is a helmet you are not carrying as a tank bag, a tail bag, or a burden on your back every time you stop. DCT models actually hold resale value slightly better than the manual variant in some markets. The transmission that some riders treat as a compromise has become a genuine selling point among buyers who know what they are looking for. Here is the bottom line on number 1. Honda set out to build the most practically useful, low operating cost, high mileage daily motorcycle on the market. The result is a machine that accidentally solved almost every senior-specific ownership problem simultaneously. Weight manageable, position correct, clutch optional, dealer everywhere, service straightforward, fuel economy exceptional, warranty real. It is not glamorous. It is not going to generate compliments in a parking lot. But it will get you home from a 200-mile day without your back arguing with you, your hand aching, or your wallet feeling the damage. That is what this list is actually about. Not which motorcycle sounds right, not which one your friend rode in 1987, not which badge makes the best story. Which motorcycle in 2026 for your body, your budget, and your riding reality actually works? The answer is usually not the one you walked into the dealership planning to buy. Tell me in the comments which one you think I got wrong, or which bike you would put on this list instead. Some of you already own a few of these. I want to know what the reality actually looked like after the first season.